All right, y'all. So earlier this morning, one of my athletes sent me this tweet by Brewster from Tread and asked my thoughts. And look, I'm not a social media guy, but I went on, I saw the tweet because I wanted to see if I can gain some context before I answered him. After I did, I promptly replied, yep, he's 100% right. Probably not what he expected, and I'm sure you either. But let's dig into this. So first of all, as with any topic, especially those that are controversial, there are generally merits on either side of the argument. So to say any of this is black and white would be ludicrous, which is why saying all athletes should be three-sport athletes is also ludicrous. Look, we live in a different world nowadays. We've created this society that likes to live in an altered reality and when necessary just completely disregards actual facts, merely to shout out nothing more than their opinion in an effort to just be heard amongst all the noise. What Ben has stated in this thread is 100% factual reality for an overwhelming majority of high school age athletes. Not all, but certainly most. Now, let's break down some of the more common arguments so we can objectively view these statements and make an informed decision instead of just being the guy on the thread that responds with ridiculous statements such as, I have 100 friends that have become successful in baseball and played multiple sports growing up. First off, there's no shot that guy has 100 friends. Second of all, yeah, are there some freaks out there? But listen, take 100, even 200, heck, even take 500 major leaguers. And yes, I'm sure that many of them did in fact play multiple sports. But guess what? That's significantly less than even 1% of all high school baseball athletes. You know what that means? It's far from reality. For many of you, for many of us that didn't win the genetic lottery or the draft of our parents, that's not us. Those guys they're referencing, they're not the norm. Heck, they might as well be aliens. So if we want to have an actual real conversation about this, then we should look to discuss the majority, not what has worked for the minority. The majority being those high school age athletes who may be on the cusp of being able to play successfully at the college level. Those athletes need to take full advantage of the one resource we all have the same amount of, but are constantly running out of, and that is time. You see, time is actually the underlying point of contention for both arguments against this topic. I'll show you. Several people argue that early specialization is horrendous for an athlete and can lead to overuse injuries, burnout, or worse, quitting the sport altogether. You know what? You're right. Feel better? But what exactly is early specialization? Sure, before the age of 15, or even simpler, before the age of high school, don't have athletes specialize. Allow them to have multiple exposures. More importantly, it's not from a physical perspective that you should allow this to happen. It's actually from a selection and mental perspective. Meaning, if you allow the athlete to self-discover which sport they possess the most natural or outlier skill in, they will likely be more intrinsically motivated to train, perform, and learn about that sport. Thus, the later or high school age specialization will be self-driven by the athlete and they will yearn for more. But make no mistake, what is the underlying argumentative point here? Once again, it's time. We all probably realize that for most young athletes that have reached the high school level, if they want to play at the college level, the commitment of time becomes increasingly more necessary. Whether that is training, tournaments, recruiting, you name it, they all take up a significant amount of time. And the unfortunate thing is they have 2 or 3 years of a window to get that time in. So to clarify, when discussing the topic, it is crucial to take into context age of the athlete at the specialization point, because time is our most valuable resource, and we must accurately decide where to allocate it. Next, we all hear, well, playing multiple sports makes you more athletic, and it gives you the ability to respond to a vast array of environmental exposures during competition. Once again, you're right, if that was your argument. However, I think all too often we give too much credit to generalized athleticism. and not enough credit to how difficult precise skill development actually is. Many of us fail to realize that while throwing, an incredibly natural action, is still in fact a skill that is bound to the same skill or motor development principles just like every other skill or action you take. That's right. Just like writing your name is a skill that had to be developed at a young age, so is throwing. And then what's further is the refinement, deep learning, and advancement of these skills. And you want to know what the most prominent proponent for deepening the learning environment of a skill is? Repetitions. And what do repetitions take? Time. The reality is this: pitching, heck, baseball, is becoming incredibly more challenging to be significantly good at. With more information, more data, and more knowledge comes a tighter funnel of talent as those who struggle to adapt and alter their skill patterning fail to last in the sport. And again, I get it, sucks to hear, but unfortunately, it's reality. However, this doesn't mean your training environment needs to be this rigid system where you only get one type of exposure. If that's the case, get a better training environment, get a better coach, educate yourself further on the positive benefits of multiplanar movements and how that affects linear and rotational patterns. Don't abide by an ideology that states you must lift heavy and you will throw hard. That's settling for what is easy to understand and easy to accomplish. But just stating that because another sporting environment exposes me to different movement patterns, well, that's a weak response and a weak excuse as to why specialization is bad. And really, you should just be handling your training environment better. Get a better coach. All right, so what about the fact that we need to be competitive or have altered competitive environments to learn how to deal with certain adversities and struggles? Guess what? Once again, you are right if this is your argument. But once again, I'm going to challenge you to find a different training environment or different training partners. Or you know what? Even consider sprinkling these exposures in as opposed to needing to make them a large percentage fixture in your incredibly valuable off-season training schedule. Here's 2 examples of ways we try to have our guys experience this while in the off-season. Number 1, every Thursday in our facility is a system-wide recovery day where we allow basketball, spike ball, football, or mobility, and even some other recovery elements. We leave it up to the athlete to allow them to have some autonomy over their training. The other way we do it, I'm all for playing sports in the off-season to ensure that you all have different competitive exposures. But didn't I just contradict myself? No, because what we suggest is playing something like rec basketball or in a flag football league. Why? Well, for the one very crucial thing we keep coming back to: time. The time that is sucked up with these off-season sports is not generally during gameplay, it's generally during practice for the gameplay. We need to put a value to our time, and the off-season time value should be very high for those wanting to play at the next level. All right, so let's talk about injury as it relates to specialization, because I know that likes to get brought up a lot. So I'm gonna come back at you to the time and training environment argument. So let's take a typical high school baseball season and say it starts in March. The typical high school baseball coach is going to be gung-ho, as he should be, and want his guys to hit the ground running on the first day of practice. Want to know why the beginning of every season sees the most amount of injuries? Time. Not enough time to recover from last season and not enough time to accurately ramp up for the season ahead. Am I saying that every baseball athlete that plays 3 sports is guaranteed to get hurt at the start of a season? No. But am I saying that there might be some heightened risk because of their time allocation for an early injury in the season? Yeah, there definitely could be. Look, I'm sure I'm leaving out some arguments on either side of this thing, but at the end of the day, what I am wanting to try and accomplish is twofold. Number 1, pronounce that we 100% agree with where Tread was coming from on this topic and support the knowledge and realistic lens they are using when discussing it. Number 2, I want to get across the fact that no matter what side of this you are on, you probably have some valid points to be made. But at the end of the day, understand that we will underpin every one of those points with where is it best for each athlete to dedicate their focus and time. And people, I promise you, there is no universal answer for that. but there most certainly are more realistic ones than just claiming that most professional athletes do this, so it must be right. Until you are one of them, you are not. Be you and decide what's best for you.